on The Indian Doctor.
You've come all the way from India? Yes.
Prem and Kamini Sharma have just arrived in Wales.
Welcome to your new home.
And if their new town isn't sure about them,
You have to watch those people.
the feeling is mutual.
They're peasants, Prem.
The award-winning series.
Need a good drama to dig into? Let us introduce The Indian Doctor. All 3 seasons are now available here in Colorado only on PBS 12. Go to pbs12.org/passport to binge.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the August 19th, 2021 edition of Colorado Inside Out. I'm your host, Dominic Dezzutti. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get started. The Mesa County clerk and recorder drama reached a fever pitch this week. Secretary of State Jenna Griswold said that the current clerk and recorder, Tina Peters, could not oversee the November election this year and appointed the former clerk and recorder, who is now the Mesa County treasurer, as an election supervisor to the county. However, Mesa County commissioners disagreed with Griswold's appointment and rebutted with an appointment of their own, former Colorado Secretary of State Wayne Williams. Patty, I didn't know this was going to get crazier from last week, but lo and behold, it proved last week was just an opening act. Where on earth do we go from here?
Well, the eyes of the world, according to Mike Lindell, Mr. MyPillow, are going to be on Mesa County because although he hasn't been able to approve election fraud in other places, this Mesa County thing is getting big, he told Vice magazine on Wednesday. And interestingly, I mentioned last week people going to the mattresses. Apparently, Tina Peters has. She is in a safe house set up by Mike Lindell right now. Meanwhile, over in Mesa County, the great thing is Wayne Williams, who was the former Secretary of State, is playing nice with Sheila Rayner, who has been appointed. She was appointed by Jenna Griswold. Wayne was appointed by the commissioners. And those two on their own decided they would work together. So we can assume Mesa County will not only have an election in November, it will have the cleanest, most efficient election ever because Wayne Williams, as we know, did a good job as Secretary of State. And he also was the one who hired Dominion, who is currently suing the voting systems, that is currently suing Mike Lindell, Rudy Giuliani, and among others, Joe Altman, who is on the lam because he failed to show up for a deposition. And he's from Parker. So the world is all watching our Mesa County for election fraud issues.
And I don't know for sure, but I think Trump won Mesa County. So, I mean, if this is going to be the hotbed of election fraud, probably not a good example. But
this is May. May was when the leak came in. So who knows what dog catcher maybe was coming up?
That's a good point. That's a good point. David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. So it's very Colorado, I think, to see Wayne Williams and Sheila Rayner working together, which is what you expect out of solid clerk and recorders and secretaries of state, which is great. But if for some reason they weren't yet, do we know who would have had the authority? Is it the commissioners? Is it the Secretary of State? Does the governor come in and break a tie? Do we even know how that works?
It's very confusing. Secretary Griswold did not purport to remove Peters from the office and create a vacancy because she clearly doesn't have that power. And the Colorado Constitution is clear that when there is a vacancy in county offices like clerk and reporter, the replacement is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. The Secretary Griswold's purported order to Peters that she can no longer supervise the election, even though she can do other clerk things like record marriages and automobile registrations. She bases it on Colorado statutes that say the Secretary of State shall supervise the clerks in their election duties, and the clerks have to obey the instructions of the Secretary of State. Now, it's kind of a pretty big extrapolation to go from that to saying that she can remove an elected clerk from doing her duties. So we're in a very unclear situation that the laws don't really provide for, and to my knowledge, we've never had a Secretary of State purport to assume such authority.
Penfield Tate, attorney with Tate Law, also a former state lawmaker. This is right up your alley. We have legal, we have state government, we have everything else here. So it's wonderful to have you here, Penn. We're getting a lot into, which I think is appropriate, into the replacements of who can handle the November elections in Mesa County. But I don't want to bury the lead. There's also a big reason why we needed someone to oversee the November election in Mesa County, is because the person who should be doing it isn't allowed to, or shouldn't be doing it, and may right now not even be in the state. When you look at this circus, what stands out to you?
How incredible it is that someone elected to do a job would jeopardize the position they're in for the sake of furthering some weird political conspiracy ideas or thoughts out there, and in the process apparently break the law in an effort to try to prove a conspiracy that ironically is questioning whether the law has been followed or whether an election has been stolen. We've talked about this many times before on this show. Sometimes you can't make this stuff up. It's just so bizarre and so weird. It's hard to follow. But I think Secretary of State Griswold had the authority to do what she did. Somebody had to do something. If the county commissioners had acted sooner, maybe she might not have acted, but someone had to do something. And so Mesa County needs someone who has some level of credibility to run elections. Secretary of State Griswold is taking care of that.
And making his premiere here at the Colorado Inside Out table, Ian Thomas Tafoya, thank you so much for being here. Activist and community builder. There are a whole lot of issues here, a lot of different angles. What do you think, what stands out to you as some of the most relevant things that we should be taking away from this story?
The thing that I'm the most excited about when it comes to this story is that both Republicans and Democrats are agreeing that how crazy this is, and they're willing to go to the mat to protect our democracy. Now, whether it works out that who has the authority, the commissioners or what, the fact is they're coming together at the right time to ensure that the bedrock of our democracy is protected. I was on the phone with some of my colleagues out in Fruita. They're very excited to see the state stepping in. I think we're going to come to a better compromise. From what I've read in the newspaper, I'm a little concerned about the voting machines and whether they're going to have new ones or we're going to do this old school late night counting. But I believe there will be crowds there making sure they do it right.
It'll certainly be entertaining to watch. Colorado Democratic Representative Jason Crow made headlines with his statement on Afghanistan this week. Crow, a veteran of the Afghanistan war, stated that the U.S. had plenty of time to handle the evacuation properly and that it should have begun months ago. Crow is joining forces with other representatives to urge Biden to keep the Kabul airport open for as long as possible. David, it's a huge international story, but as we're trying to do, keep it to a Colorado angle, and Representative Crow certainly provided that. What did you think of his comments?
They were sincere, and as he put out in an email recently, he said he was heartbroken. And on his congressional website, he's got good resources for people who want to help Afghani refugees or former U.S. soldiers. The president plainly is not heartbroken. Brushed a question off from George Stephanopoulos as saying, "Oh, that happened 4 or 5 days ago." Which is consistent with what he told Richard Holbrooke, President Obama's special envoy to Afghanistan and Pakistan, previously about getting our allies out in case of withdrawal. He said we don't have to worry about that. We did it in Vietnam. Nixon and Kissinger got away with it. And he's done the opposite of what the British and French are doing, which is sending in their military to rescue their people trapped behind Taliban lines. The administration won't. He says we planned for every contingency, but he shut down the State Department's Contingency and Crisis Response Bureau. The Soviet Union in 1989 proved you can withdraw from Afghanistan in an orderly way. You take your weapons out. You don't leave them to be captured by the enemy. You don't leave Bagram Air Force Base in the dead of night without telling your Afghani allies. You don't leave 5,000 high-value Taliban prisoners behind to be released and returned to jihad. You consult with your allies, the opposite of what Biden did, who wouldn't take a phone call from the British Prime Minister for 36 hours. The odds of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan and of much more jihad against the United States have greatly increased because of the fecklessness of the Biden administration.
Penn, I think we've seen critics from all angles on this one. Jason Crow has a unique perspective as a representative, as a Democrat, and as a veteran of the war. Do you think that is going to hold a certain amount of authority when it comes to what happens next?
You know, it might, but I would respectfully offer that, and I think Congressman Crow made good points, and you're right, his 2 tours in duty uniquely qualify him to talk about this. But I think we're all missing the forest for the trees. The real issue is this country has not learned after Vietnam that you can't necessarily militarily occupy a country or a region, impose your will and your preferred form of government and economic system on a country and a people whose religion, whose culture, whose history may be diametrically opposed to what you're trying to impose upon them. This result was inevitable, whether the U.S. pulled out during George Bush II, who started this, during Obama, during Trump, or now. This result was inevitable. You cannot compel control over people who the whole concept of what you want to impose on them is just foreign to their very being. And as a country, we've got to understand that with this administration and future administrations with regard to our foreign policy, or we're going to be right back here again.
Ian, not only do we have, I think, the questions surrounding the evacuation, but we're seeing the pictures of them, but there are Afghanistan refugees landing in different parts of the United States, including some will be here in Colorado, and opinions coming out about that. So this is not just an opinion of, well, we see it on some photos or some video of an evacuation, but now the very people that we're hoping to secure, what happens to them now. How do you think Colorado citizens and Colorado organizations will be responding to the entire issue?
Well, I believe that there are lots of groups that are ready to help resettle individuals. I think we have a larger immigration system problem all the way around of people trying to do this work. I'm 35 years old. 9/11 happened on my way to American history class when I was in 10th grade. Many of my friends were injured in Afghanistan, in Iraq. And what I would say is I would agree, this neoliberal idea of nation building isn't working. We have homeless people in our own streets. We're rebuilding infrastructure and then blowing it up and rebuilding it and blowing it up in these other places. With climate crisis coming, we're going to have to figure out a better way to have an immigration system. But I would agree wholeheartedly with Jason Crow. This could have been done better. There's no doubt about that. And we should do our due diligence to get these individuals out. The ones that helped us and those that are seeking asylum, I'm for asylum seekers.
Patty, we've gone from pictures of all these different people on C-17s to now where are they going to land, and then what happens there, how not just getting them out is a priority, what happens next. How do you think Colorado will respond?
Well, I think with Jason Crow helping to push, Colorado will respond in a very welcoming way. You don't see any indication that if it is allowed to. Jason Crow, one of his staffers is a former Afghani interpreter. And Jason Crow was pushing early on to up the number of visas that were allowed for the people who needed to leave Afghanistan, to make them work faster. And that's when you get into, yes, the end was going to be inevitable. It did not have to inevitably be this bad, that they could have started moving people out a lot earlier. Certainly we knew we were leaving. That had been announced. There was no excuse for that. And when David talks about weapons being left behind, you look at the planes and the tanks and everything that's been left behind, and you're like, if you knew you were leaving, I think you could actually get rid of those or disable those. You don't need to leave the Taliban in a position where they have a really well-equipped army.
School districts across the state are issuing various levels of mask mandates as classes begin this month. The changes are creating confusion for some parents and controversy among school districts, with some public meetings resulting in the need for security and police escorts of officials to cars. Penn, I can understand the confusion, but frankly, you need an advanced class in geometry to figure out all the different angles of this issue. What county are you in? What school district within that county? Is it a county commissioner versus a school district? And at what age are you? Do you have to wear a mask or not? I can understand the frustration. I'm not sure if it requires security, but I get it. What is the right response to all this confusion?
I think the right response is to take a step back and as a community, acknowledge a couple things. Number one, the Delta variant wasn't planned. Number two, it's causing breakthrough infections. Number three, this disease kills people, and it kills and hospitalized kids. And so I think once you accept that fact, the question then becomes, and so many people have said it, it's about the sciences, it's about medicine. What do you do? Masks have been proven to work. Vaccinations used to work until the Delta variant came around, and now, we've got 3 U.S. senators with breakthrough infections of COVID. And so school districts, if they're going to act in the best interest of the kids and the teachers and indirectly their parents, I think have a right to impose these mask mandates. Yeah, there needs to be better coordination. You shouldn't be a parent waking up in the morning, have 3 kids in 3 different schools, and not be certain what you're supposed to do with each of your children. We've got to have better coordination, but part of the problem is we've still got people running around without masks who refuse to get vaccinated. So you've got a fundamental disagreement with some people who are basically saying, I want to play Russian roulette with your life and my life and do nothing. And we've got to figure out a way to break through and address that issue.
Ian, local control for school districts has always been an important issue in Colorado, and with the various populations we have, it's good that we have that. But in this case, it's creating a lot of confusion. Do you think it is time for, whether it's a state mandate or some state guidance, to step in?
Well, I think state guidance from health officials is always a good thing. We saw that through the pandemic. I'm really in favor of precautionary principle. What can we do to save the most amount of people and protect the most amount of people? And that's to wear masks. I mean, simple. But we can't pretend like masks is the only thing that needs to happen. We need real procedures and guidelines for isolating people, for closing classrooms, for actually talking to parents, for letting teachers know. I would say a lot of people are caught up in the mask mandate. It's those deeper issues that are really important. And, for people of color, for youth who are dying at higher rates, are exposed to higher levels of pollution, that's a real deal for us. And I would think in rural Colorado, where you have to go much farther to get to a hospital and there are fewer beds, that they would be a little bit more precautionary.
Patty, like we talked about, the confusion I can at least understand. I can empathize with parents, but where I got confused was seeing the images that different police and security needed at school board meetings and officials needing escorts to their cars. These are big decisions, but it shouldn't come down to personal threats of safety. When you looked at all these different headlines, what came to you?
Well, when you talk about personal safety, look at the last year and a half, how uncivil our society has gotten, and there's no question it has become worse. It's not just words that people are using now that they can get back together, it's also actions. So that is not surprising. It's dismaying, but it's not surprising. In some states, like Washington, I believe, just adopted a mandatory rule. You also have other states like Texas and Florida, which will not allow schools to have any rules. And then in Colorado, Polis has pretty much gone to, it's up to the school district and the counties, even though the state health department has advised, here is what is best. Here is what you should do. It's a very strong recommendation. Will we go to the point where we have a statewide mandate? I don't think so at this point, as long as the numbers kind of trend down a little bit from where they're going in Colorado. But we would certainly like to see the tempers calm down a little bit.
David, Douglas County is an interesting point for me because you have county commissioners saying no mask mandate. You have a school district saying, yeah, we're actually going to have one. Who has the authority in that race?
It's not clear, and you'd have to go back to the statutes that set them up. But it's also, one thing that is very clear is that some of the people who put up the lawn signs, I believe in science and all that, most of them have never read a scientific study on this topic. And the science and the studies are much more mixed than the believe in science people acknowledge. There's not one nation in Europe that imposes mask mandates on small children. The European Centers for Disease Control recommends against it because when you take a precautionary approach, you look at the whole picture of health and well-being, and it's well known and obvious that small children need visual cues from people who are talking to them to socialize, to learn how to talk. And now we're going to have some children who have been deprived of that in school for years. And I think the harms of that greatly outweigh the infection risks.
Governor Jared Polis, alongside tribal leaders, rescinded the 19th century proclamations that resulted in the Sand Creek Massacre and other acts of violence to Native Americans. Surrounding the rescission were conversations about the history of Colorado and its treatment of natives and the trickle-down effect proclamations like these caused. Ian, we start with you on this one. How significant were the actions we saw this week?
Well, I mean, there's something, but after talking with those in the Native community, we want more. My ancestors are Hickory Apache, aka Dinde, and Okewinge, which used to be called the San Juan Pueblo. We want to start by saying we need to put an end to Line 3. We need our officials to stand up to these transnational corporations that are seeking to be the end of us, according to the IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Change. We also want to acknowledge the missing and murdered Indigenous women that surround this industry and this work, and we want to talk about land back. This is happening at CSU with the Hughes Stadium. That's also happening with CU with their 300 acres. I myself sit on a diversity inclusion for the Natural Resources Committee or division for the state of Colorado, and we've been arguing about Fisher's Peak, right? Here we are changing the names from colonizers, and yet we're giving new ones at the same time. And so, I was invited to this event. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. What I told Jared Polis' staff is, this is a step. They all add up, but until you're really giving us our land back, there's not much else we can say. My ancestors owned, claimed, and protected for years the sand dunes as one of our sacred places. You can go there and see books about us. Yet we don't have a reservation. We don't have our own land in the state of Colorado. Unfortunately, only two do. Yet because we were the headwater state, so many peoples came here for the abundance of the ecology, and so we have a lot of work to do. I see Jared Polis trying to take a victory lap on this. We're clear, it's not a victory lap to us all the way.
Patty, you and Westford have covered Sand Creek in addition to a lot of issues related to this for a long time. How big of a step was this for Governor Polis? Where do you think he goes from here?
Well, when you look back over the history of the state, this actually was a very big step. Not when you look at what happened to the indigenous peoples, but when you look at how history's been taught. People didn't hear about Sand Creek 25 years ago in Colorado. They didn't even identify the site of the actual massacre until about 2 decades ago. It became a National Historic Site. If you've never been there, you should go. It's an amazing place. So people slowly have begun to understand what it means who weren't introduced to it earlier. In 2014, which is the 150th anniversary of the Sand Creek Massacre, Governor Hickenlooper stood up and apologized on behalf of the state to the descendants of those who had been killed there. So that was a major move. It's just starting. There's so much more. I listened yesterday morning. I was at that ceremony on Tuesday, but I also listened yesterday, the state naming board, when you're looking at all the other things that need to be renamed in this state. We have 5 different proposals to change the name of Mount Evans, and that's not the only thing we're going to have to deal with Mount Evans, who lost his territorial position because of what happened at Sand Creek, but we still have a street named after him, we have a town named after him, and we have a lot of names that are insulting to the people of this state.
David, what did you think of the move from Polis?
Well, it had no legal effect because those proclamations expired by their own terms. They were issued in the middle of the Colorado War, which was a land-back movement started by the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, and the Apache to exterminate the settlements in Colorado and get their land back. And they got off to a quite good start. There were only 3 trails going into Colorado. Everyone was shut down. The mail was shut down. All the telegraph lines were cut, and the settlers in Colorado came close to starvation during that war. That war ended on October 14th, 1865, when the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Apache signed the Treaty of the Upper Arkansas, which brought the war to the end and the end of the proclamations. In the course of that war, the Sand Creek Massacre was a war crime, and because it included the execution of non-combatant women and children who had been captured. And the United States government in that treaty acknowledged the gross and wanton outrages at Sand Creek and paid reparations. So the federal government's been on top of this matter for a long time, and there's still quite obviously a great deal of ignorance in Colorado, not only about what happened at Sand Creek, but also about the broader context of the war.
Penn, wrap it up for us.
There's a recurrent theme that is occurring in our society where I think we're beginning to have to understand we've got make right for the history in this country, whether it's land back for indigenous people, whether it's reparations for blacks, whether it's re-examining foreign policy and the injustices that we've committed around the world and some injustices we continue to commit within this country. I think questions are being asked, positions are being staked out, and I think change is coming, real and hopefully lasting change is coming, because I think younger people are fed up with some of the junk they've been taught, they've watched, and they've heard about, and they want to see things done differently. And I say bravo for them.
It's been a great show, but a chatty show. It's time to go to our favorite part, Disgrace of the Week, but let's do it rather quickly. Patty?
Let me return to the Western Slope and Lauren Boebert, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. We just learned this week, because she filled out her financial forms wrong, that her husband earned $1 million over 2 years consulting with oil and gas.
David?
Disgraceful is the behavior of Afghanistan's former president, is the current legitimate president of Afghanistan, the former vice president, Amruli Saleh, is leading guerrilla resistance in the Pandjshir Valley against the Taliban, a group that has support of only about 5% of the Afghan population and wants to impose a foreign ideology on them.
Penn?
That we've had restrictions placed on the Colorado River because as a society we just haven't been careful about how we use a precious resource we can't replace, water.
And those restrictions are coming upriver.
They will flow upstream.
Ian?
Yeah, I'd like to call out the Aurora City Council for voting down having a climate crisis committee, given everything that we're seeing and day after day of air quality. It makes no sense to me.
Time to say something nice about somebody. Patty?
Peaches. The Palisade peaches are in. You can go to 3 different festivals across Colorado this year, in Lafayette and Fort Collins and Palisade.
They finally had a fantastic weather year, so go and get your Palisade peaches. David?
The Colorado Springs School District 49, which has put an end to teaching racist junk in the classroom, such as the idea that only white people are punctual and logical.
Penn?
A shout out to Boulder City Council and the City of Boulder, where a week ago yesterday, I'm proud to say that the municipal building has been renamed the Penfield W. Tate II Municipal Building. I was pleased to see them honor my dad in that fashion.
Hear, hear. Ian?
Well, congratulations to that team. I'd like to shout out the Waste No More team, a group of young activists that I trained on how to run a ballot initiative. We turned in 17,000 signatures, almost double what we needed. We trained 50 individuals, young leaders, people of color and women in leadership from the beginning and in the suburbs. So watch out, here they're coming to run their own issues.
Well, you know me, when I say something nice, I usually use this good platform for birthday greetings from my family. If I forget the one on Sunday, I'm really in trouble. So it is my wife's annual anniversary of her 29th birthday on Sunday. So happy birthday, Paula, and hope it is a good one. I also want to give say something nice to all of the viewers and members out there reaching out to Colorado Inside Out with your thoughts and becoming part of our membership team, becoming a member of PBS 12. As you know, we're in the midst of our August pledge drive. So if you love this show, you have yet to become a member, take time to go to our website right now and join the crowd. It's the cool thing to do. For everybody here at PBS 12 and Colorado Inside Out, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.